Welcome to this episode of the Deep Penetration Podcast. If you do not know who I am, my name is Danny, and I am a self-esteem and love coach that works with the LGBTQIA plus community. And I work specifically with people, with couples that are trying to find your self-confidence, right? Understand yourself, be comfortable with yourself, and learn how to navigate and manage and have a fulfilling, successful relationship. So, that being said, the episode for today and what we are talking and discussing are the top 3 topics that I recommend you avoid when you are going on a date with somebody. So, the 3 things that I usually recommend you avoid on a date, first date, second date, third date, is talking about previous relationships, finances, or commitment. And before we get into that, I want to acknowledge a few things, right? So, in the queer community, a lot of first dates involve a hookup, and hookup culture is kind of woven into the fabric of the culture. And oftentimes it does result in a lot of failed relationships. And we have to ask ourselves the question, why? Um, to be honest, there's a ton of different reasons why, but here are just a couple that I have come to find over the years. So the first one is, as an individual who identifies as bisexual and has or experienced the process of coming out, there is a sense of liberation and freedom that comes with saying the words out loud. And that's not just specific to bisexuality, right? That is the case with anybody who decides to come out and identify as queer, lesbian, bisexual, gay, trans, whatever the case may be. There is a sense of liberation that comes with saying the words out loud. You are no longer chained to this kind of facade that you've created in order to survive, and you can begin the process of embracing your authentic self. And with that comes the desire for exploration and experimentation. And you want to do those things without the guilt you have been holding on to for years and years and years, because you felt the need to conform to heteronormative expectations. And as a community, we have faced many challenges. Historically speaking, we have faced oppression, discrimination, and even violence for embracing our natural and true nature. And that historical trauma, coupled with limiting legal rights that is still currently affecting our ability to live freely without judgment, affects many people's ability to see the value in long-term relationships. And although we may want the relationship, the challenges we face make it very complicated. So adopting a casual approach to dating kind of relieves that pressure and allows for our need of human connection to still be satisfied. And why do I mention that? Right? Because first dates should be fun and exciting. You are getting the opportunity to meet someone that could potentially be your lifelong partner, depending on what you prioritize in your life. It may be the most important interview of your life. And look, I know that's a little bit exaggerated, but you get what I'm saying, right? So I get excited about talking or talking about the possibilities with you guys and with people. At heart, I'm a hopeless romantic, even though I'm pretty realistic when it comes to dating and the expectations and my personal experiences in the queer community with dating. It's still exciting to talk about. It's still fun to think about the possibilities and to help people like you to find your person. Also, I'm well aware it shouldn't be looked at as an interview, like I was saying, because that adds a lot of pressure. But at the end of the day, there has to be some level of intentionality when you are dating. So hooking up on the first date is off limits in my book. Now, I'm not trying to be a hypocrite here, because I have had my fair share of hookups on first dates, but I think also in queer culture, it's a little bit different, in the sense that hooking up is kind of it's been normalized, and we have apps such as Grinder where you kind of scratch an itch, and when you need it, you get it, and it's very it's readily available, and I can tell you from personal experience, I have gone through the whole process, right? You download it because of a need that needs to be fulfilled in that moment. You have the experience. Maybe it's a great experience. Maybe it's not such a great experience. You get bored of it, you delete it, and then a few weeks later, you download it again. It's like this thing that just never really goes away. And I have my own personal opinions about Grinder. I think Grinder has contributed to the queer community in not the greatest way. But I also don't want to dismiss the fact that it has helped a lot of people to have that exploration phase, get to know what they like sexually, and even have met people that they are in a relationship with. But I digress. So when it comes to first dates, like I said, for me, if you are looking for a serious relationship, hooking up is off the table when it comes to the first date. I will even go as far as to say that the first few dates should be off limits when it comes to sex. And if you are wanting to lock down that relationship, it's important that you date intentionally, not casually, like I said. So hooking up on the first date is one of the most casual things that you can do and doesn't really set you apart from any other date that person has been on, right? First impressions count when you are dating. So let me make this one count and talk about the 3 topics to avoid, like I mentioned. So the first one, previous relationships. I speak from experience on this one. And yes, you may be saying you're a relationship coach. How is it that you have made this mistake in the past? But look, I am human, and the reason why I talk about these things is because based on my own personal experience, I have learned what to do and what not to do, right? I will still remember, and I talk about this in one of my YouTube videos, a date that I went on with this guy, and he was great, right? Very attractive, super successful. He's a lawyer. We connected. Went on our first date. Everything seemed to be going well. We went and grabbed tea at a mall in Los Angeles called the Century City Mall. And even when we were sitting and having a conversation about our interests and our likes and what we're looking for and all of that stuff, I still remember to this day, this guy with his mom came walking past us and he was like, "Oh, you guys are the most beautiful couple." And we both kind of looked at each other like, "Oh, okay." Since it was our first day, right? So kind of feels meant to be, serendipitous, all of those things. And look, as somebody who identifies as queer, I think we've all been there before. Let me know if you have or not, where even when somebody is nice to you, like a guy is nice to you, immediately in your brain, you're like, "Oh, does this person like me?" And that comes from, again, I think our experiences growing up with repression and all of those things and needing validation and acceptance. But all of that to say, we go on our second date. I recommend this burger joint in Beverly Hills. Cool. We meet up. Things seem to be going well. And then the relationship coach in me kicks in and I start talking about my previous dates, previous relationships, asking him about his previous relationships. And it's just the inquisitive nature in me, right? And at one point in the date, he stops and he looks at me and he says, "Hey, I appreciate you wanting to know about myself and my history and my past, but I just don't think that it's the best idea for us to talk about previous relationships on a date." And I was like, "You know what? You are right." And I was mortified, obviously, but I changed the subject really well. I thought I recovered super well. We left that date, we said our goodbyes, and I remember when I was walking back to my car, I was like, "I will never fucking hear from this person again." And I was right. I never heard from him again. Um, and honestly, I don't blame him. But again, I say all of that because The reason why I'm presenting these things to you is because I've experienced it myself and I know what works and what doesn't work. So do not talk about your previous relationships. When you do that, it is possible that the person you are on a date with will feel like you haven't moved on from the past or your last relationship. And that also can be interpreted as you don't get over things easily. Aside from that, it's just not sexy. A big part of the first date is exploring your connection and your chemistry and hijacking each other's imaginations and becoming excited for the possibilities, future dates, adventures, what sex will be like. So if you are focused on the past, you're not present in that moment, and you are also blocking the potential of a future. It's also kind of disrespectful, to be honest. And again, I'm saying this because I'm fully calling myself out. So imagine this. You match with somebody and you're very attracted to them. The both of you seem to be aligned in many areas of your life. The excitement, the anticipation begins to grow, and you're looking forward to meeting them for the first time. You meet and you instantly feel that spark. You have the butterflies in your stomach, your palms are sweaty, your heart's racing, and you start to imagine future possibilities, right? And you know exactly what I'm talking about. I already said this as a queer individual. And an attractive person says hello and in a particular tone, right? And without them even knowing, you've already lived an entire romantic life with them in your head. So things are going great. And all of a sudden, they start talking about their ex, why the relationship didn't work, issues they experienced, current drama, and you are suddenly sucked out of that moment. Don't be that person. The second thing here is finances. I feel like this goes without saying, but believe me when I tell you, this comes up so often in my one-on-one coaching sessions. It's insane. And when someone is trying to figure out why they didn't land a second date, usually it's because they had a conversation about money. They talked about their previous relationships and the next topic or the next one that we'll be talking about, right? So money is a sensitive subject for most people due to the fact that we live in a society that equates success to financial wealth. So as queer men, there is a desire to beat the odds, to prove everybody wrong and to become wildly successful, right? Aesthetics and lifestyle is prioritized, and therefore there is this kind of internal and external pressure to succeed. So I find that most couples that struggle with finances in their relationships, whether it's heterosexual or queer, right? That is something that comes up for every single person. But there's this level of complexity within queer relationships due to gender roles, right? So if you have two guys in a relationship and one makes significantly less money, does he take on more of the submissive role in the relationship? And if so, there is this kind of level of emasculation that occurs because we have been conditioned since childhood that men are the providers. And that is part of a heteronormative stereotype that is very present in many gay and queer relationships. Granted, that is dependent on your view of feminine and masculine roles. Maybe you are okay with being the more submissive one, and it's something that has already been established in your relationship, right? Because every relationship is different. So the experience is going to be subjective. I am basing this on my experience as a coach and working with couples that have struggled with this in their relationship. So, talking about income, assets, anything that has to do with finances is figuratively and quite literally off the table, especially for a first date. Don't do it. Just don't do it. If your focus is on finances, that brings into question your motive for dating in the first place. Is this truly to connect with somebody? And the last thing that you do not talk about on a first date is commitment. As a love coach, I think the conversation around commitment is super important. Don't get me wrong. However, there is a time and a place. So if you are someone who has experienced this or done this on a first date, then you know what I am talking about. It's not likely the person will get up from the table and walk away from you if you start talking about commitment on the first date, but it is not likely that they will want to lock down a second date. And also, if you are talking about commitment on the first date, I think it's important that you take a step back and you reflect on why you feel that there is a need to discuss that on the first date. Is it possible that you've had really shitty dating experiences in the past? Is it possible that you've had a string of failed relationships? Is it possible that you are tired of putting yourself out there and you finally have gotten to a place where you have zero filter, you don't give a shit, and you just want to lock down a relationship? Because if that is the reality of the situation, my recommendation is to pull back. Pull yourself out of dating for a little bit and just decompress and heal and relax a little bit, right? Because that energy, you may think it's you just knowing what you want and being confident and all of those things, but it's kind of got a touch of anxiety and insecurity and fear, right? You are being that aggressive because you are basing it off of your previous experiences and you are tired of the rat race. So take a break, take a step back. If you want to lock down a second date, like I said, let's not talk about commitment. Why? The conversation comes off as being needy. It comes off as being clingy or maybe even just a little bit anxious, like I was talking about in your attachment style. So first dates are intended to just enjoy each other's company and to really feel things out, not literally. I already said sex is off the table on the first date if you are looking for a committed, serious relationships. So don't think that I'm saying feel things out as in like actually quite literally feel things out. No sex on the first date. Keep in mind, if you have followed my advice on dating, then you going on a first date with someone who is aligned with your expectations, there is no need to talk about future commitment because it's something that's kind of already been established since the beginning. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I basically created a course on dating, one-on-one dating for queer men within the community and understanding how to really kind of navigate the world of dating because I know how exhausting and complex it can be. I also understand that for a lot of you, this can be like your 100th first date and you just don't want to waste any time. But keep in mind, this may not be their 100th date. And I would hate for you to go into a date with such a negative mentality. True connection only happens when we open ourselves up to the possibilities and allow ourselves to be unapologetically ourselves. So, again, the three things that you do not want to talk about on a first date: previous relationships, finances, and commitment. Now, a lot of you may push back and say conversations about commitment are very serious. I get that 100%. But like I said, there's a time and a place. If you are navigating dating apps in the right way, right, and you are putting the work in and you're doing your due diligence and you're reading people's profiles and you're building connection through conversation first, organically, a lot of these things will start to come up if you're able to read between the lines. And also if that person is able to communicate very clearly what it is they are looking for without putting that pressure or coming off as aggressive in regards to, I need commitment now. You should be able to pick up on a lot of those things. So by the time you get to a first date, it's not necessarily something that you need to talk about. Now, as the dates progress, as you commit to seeing each other, as you start to build a connection and you start to visualize a future with this person, then I think it's appropriate to have that conversation. But let's hold off on that, right? And again, even finances within relationships of people that have been together for years and years and years still can be a tricky subject to talk about. I am already stumbling over my words. So I think it's time that we cut the episode. um, Anyways, I pretty much have already said all that it is I think I need to say about this subject. And again, like I said, this episode is to help you to identify the things that you should not talk about on a first date. There are many other things that you shouldn't talk about, but these are the primary things that you can utilize today, even if you're going on a date in the next hour or two. I hope you guys found that helpful. I hope you found it educational. I hope you got something from that. And if you are enjoying the podcast, please make sure that you are subscribing to the podcast so that you can get notifications every time a new episode comes out. I post an episode once or twice a week right now, usually Tuesdays and Thursdays. So be on the lookout for the next episode. I will see you there.